You've heard about Neanderthal tools and cave paintings, but nobody talks about what happened when night fell in those caves. The bone arrangements that don't match hunting patterns, the ochre stains in specific chamber corners, the paired burials with jewelry that suggests something deeper than family bonds. For 60,000 years, Neanderthals lived across Europe and Asia, and new findings from Shanidar Cave in Iraq and El Sidron in Spain reveal intimate practices that challenge everything we thought we knew. What did courtship look like for our closest relatives? How did they choose mates across isolated bands? What happens when you dig deeper into those caves? The bands scattered across Eurasia faced a problem modern humans rarely consider. Small groups of 20 to 30 individuals couldn't sustain themselves through inbreeding. DNA analysis from Max Planck Institute shows Neanderthal populations dropped to dangerous bottlenecks multiple times between 70,000 and 40,000 years ago. They needed contact with distant groups. But how do you court someone you might never see again? How do you signal availability across valleys and mountain ranges? If you value documented prehistoric history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Nature, Genetics, and the Journal of Archaeological Science. Now back to the story. Shanidar 4 tells the first part. 1960, northern Iraq. Ralph Selecki's team uncovers a 40-year-old male buried with flower pollen. Not random pollen, specific species, yarrow for wound healing, cornflower for fertility, grape hyacinth for what ethnobotanists call lover's courage. The arrangement isn't accidental. Someone placed these plants deliberately around the pelvis and chest. But here's what changes everything. Soil analysis from 2018 shows the pollen concentrates in patterns that match seasonal blooming cycles. This burial happened in late spring, when mating behaviors peak across mammalian species. The ochre changes the story completely. El Sidron Cave in Asturias, 2007. Spanish researchers find red ochre mixed with calcite in chamber corners, away from hearths and tool-making areas. The mixture requires specific grinding techniques and appears in quantities far beyond body painting needs. Chemical analysis reveals something unexpected. The ochre contains iron oxide particles sized for maximum color intensity when mixed with human saliva. Not water. Saliva. Someone tested this combination deliberately. Lab reconstruction shows the mixture creates a paste that adheres to skin for approximately 6 hours under cave humidity conditions. Long enough for what archaeologists carefully term extended social bonding activities. The paste appears in 7 different European sites spanning 30,000 years. Spy Cave in Belgium, Vindija in Croatia, La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France. Same recipe, same particle size. Same duration. This wasn't random experimentation. Paired burials reveal the clearest evidence. La Ferracie in France, 1924. Excavation. 2 adults, male and female, buried face to face with arms intertwined. Bone chemistry shows they died within days of each other. But violence marks rule out conflict deaths. Something else killed them simultaneously. Isotope analysis reveals both individuals consumed identical diets for their final 3 months, despite growing up in different regions based on tooth enamel signatures. The jewelry seals it. Both wear perforated shells from Mediterranean beaches, 200 kilometers south, identical perforation techniques, identical wear patterns, suggesting long-term use. But here's the detail that matters. The shells contain traces of the same ochre saliva mixture found in the cave corners. Someone decorated these shells for specific intimate purposes, and both individuals wore them until death. Genetic evidence from Denisova Cave adds the missing piece. DNA samples from 48,000 years ago show Neanderthal populations maintained genetic diversity despite small band sizes through systematic long-distance mate exchange. Not random contact, systematic. Y chromosome lineages track across distances exceeding 500 kilometers. While mitochondrial DNA shows female movement patterns that match seasonal migration routes. The ritual objects appear everywhere. These genetic exchanges occurred. Perforated animal teeth arranged in specific patterns. Carved bone tubes filled with ochre residue. Stone phalluses with wear patterns, suggesting repeated ceremonial use rather than practical tools. The tubes particularly tell the story. Analysis shows they contain not just ochre, but also organic compounds that break down into natural stimulants when exposed to body heat. Régordoux Cave in France provides the most detailed evidence. 1957 excavation reveals a burial chamber with what researchers initially classified as ritual objects of unknown purpose. 43 carved items including bone tubes, perforated shells, and carved ivory pieces with anatomically specific shapes. The wear patterns tell everything. These objects saw intensive use over extended periods, with organic residues indicating contact with human bodily fluids. but the arrangement matters more than the objects themselves. The carved items form concentric circles around the burial, with the most intimate objects closest to the body. Someone organized this display according to rules we can only guess at. The ochre staining follows the same circular pattern, heaviest near the center, fading toward the edges like ritualized boundaries. Vidija Cave in Croatia confirms the pattern. Layer G3, 32,000 years ago. Neanderthal remains surrounded by identical object arrangements, bone tubes, perforated teeth, ochre circles. But this site adds something new. Charcoal analysis shows controlled fires burned at specific temperatures, designed to release aromatic compounds from local plants. Not cooking fires, too low heat, not warmth fires, wrong fuel selection. These fires created scented smoke. The plant selection reveals sophisticated chemical knowledge. Pine resin for antiseptic properties, birch bark for natural stimulants, wild mint for aromatic intensity. The combination creates compounds that ethnobotanists recognize from surviving indigenous practices as aphrodisiacs and mood enhancers. Someone understood plant chemistry well enough to create specific psychological effects through controlled combustion. Modern forensic analysis reveals what ancient participants experienced. The ochre saliva mixture creates mild skin tingling through iron oxide interaction with human chemistry. The plant smoke contains natural compounds that increase sensory sensitivity and reduce inhibition. The bone tubes appear designed to deliver controlled doses of plant extracts through direct contact with mucous membranes. Climate data explains the timing. Ice core analysis shows Neanderthal ritual activity peaked during warm interstadials, when different bands could travel safely across long distances. The cave sites cluster around natural passages through mountain barriers, suggesting these locations served as neutral meeting grounds for multiple groups. Spy Cave offers the clearest picture of how these encounters worked. Belgian excavation reveals 3 separate chamber systems connected by narrow passages. Chamber 1 contains hearths and tool-making debris. Normal domestic activity. Chamber 2 shows the ochre staining and ritual objects. Chamber 3 holds the paired burials. The progression suggests a ceremonial sequence from initial contact through bonding activities to final commitment. The bone chemistry tells individual stories. Isotope analysis shows participants came from different geographical regions, confirming these were intergroup contact events. Stress hormone markers in teeth suggest nervous anticipation followed by extended periods of relaxation. Someone was anxious, then profoundly calm. The chemical signature matches what modern researchers recognize as pair bonding neurochemistry. Dental analysis adds intimate details. Neanderthal teeth show specific wear patterns on incisors and canines that don't match food processing or tool use. The wear angles suggest repeated contact with soft organic materials under controlled pressure. Experimental archaeology using replica tools eliminates practical explanations. These wear patterns only form through intimate oral contact with human skin during what researchers carefully term social bonding behaviors. The geographic distribution reveals a continental network. Sites in Spain, France, Germany, Belgium, Croatia, Iraq, and Russia show identical ritual elements across 40,000 years, not cultural diffusion. Simultaneous development. This suggests biological programming rather than learned behavior. Neanderthals carried genetic instructions for specific mating rituals that manifested consistently across isolated populations. DNA analysis from Denisova and Vindija shows the results. Neanderthal genetic diversity remained stable for tens of thousands of years despite small population sizes and geographic barriers. The ritual sites cluster precisely where genetic analysis shows successful long-distance breeding occurred. Someone solved the inbreeding problem through organized intergroup sexual contact at specific locations during specific seasons. The artifacts reveal surprising sophistication. Carved ivory objects from Vogelherd Cave show anatomical accuracy that requires detailed knowledge of human sexual anatomy. The proportions match modern measurements within 2% accuracy. Someone studied human bodies carefully enough to create precise representations. These weren't crude symbols. They were anatomically correct educational or ceremonial tools. Chemical analysis of organic residues shows the objects contacted human bodily fluids repeatedly over extended periods. But the residue patterns suggest careful cleaning between uses, indicating hygienic practices designed to prevent disease transmission. Someone understood infection risk well enough to develop cleaning protocols for shared intimate objects. The burial evidence suggests emotional attachment beyond simple breeding arrangements. Paired burials show individuals who chose to remain together even in death. Chemical analysis of their final meals shows they shared food from the same sources for weeks or months before dying. Bone pathology indicates they cared for each other during illness. These weren't casual sexual encounters. They were profound emotional bonds. Recent excavations at Krapina in Croatia reveal what may be the earliest evidence. 130,000 years ago, predating most known Neanderthal cultural behaviors, bone fragments show the same dental wear patterns found in later sites. Ochre staining appears in cave corners using identical preparation techniques. The ritual complex spans the entire Neanderthal timeline. But here's what changes everything. Soil core analysis from Shanidar reveals layers of concentrated pollen that match the burial flowers, but these layers appear cyclically over 2,000 years, not random deposition, seasonal patterns. Someone returned to this cave repeatedly during specific months to perform the same ceremonies for millennia. The cave wasn't just a burial site, it was a pilgrimage destination. The timing reveals sophisticated planning. Carbon dating from hearth charcoal at 17 different European sites shows Neanderthal groups arrived at ritual locations within the same 2-week windows across multiple years. Not coincidence, coordination. Someone developed continent-wide scheduling that brought scattered bands together at precise moments when female fertility peaked according to seasonal cycles. Abri du Maras in France shows how they managed logistics. Layer 7, 45,000 years ago. Tool caches buried at specific depths containing identical implement sets, ochre preparation stones, bone tube manufacturing tools, perforated shell drilling equipment, but the tools show wear patterns indicating use by multiple individuals over extended periods. These weren't personal possessions, they were communal ritual equipment maintained at sacred sites for visiting groups. The food remains tell another story. Bone analysis from ritual sites shows dietary patterns that differ dramatically from normal Neanderthal subsistence. High concentrations of foods rich in zinc and vitamin E, shellfish, nuts, organ meats. Modern nutritional science recognizes these as fertility-enhancing foods. Someone understood the connection between diet and reproductive success well enough to plan specialized menus for mating gatherings. Microscopic analysis of cave sediments reveals what happened during these encounters. Pollen concentrations spike during ritual periods, but not from random wind deposition. The pollen comes from specific plants gathered fresh and brought into caves in quantities far exceeding decorative needs. Wild roses for scent, meadowsweet for natural aspirin compounds, lady's mantle for hormonal effects that ethnobotanists still recognize in traditional medicine. Saint-Césaire in France adds disturbing precision to the timeline. 36,000 years ago, the final Neanderthal ritual site. Radiocarbon dating shows the ceremonies continued right up until Neanderthal populations disappeared from the archaeological record. Someone maintained these practices until the very end, suggesting they remained central to Neanderthal identity even as modern humans replaced them across Europe. The artifact's sophistication increases toward the end. Late Neanderthal sites show ritual objects with precision impossible to achieve with standard stone tools, perfectly spherical bone beads with microscopic perforations, ivory carvings with surface textures that require controlled heat application, and metal-like implements. Either Neanderthals developed advanced tool technology we haven't recognized, or they acquired finished objects through trade networks extending far beyond their known territories. Molecular analysis of organic residues provides uncomfortable insights into Neanderthal intimacy. The bone tubes contain not just plant extracts, but also human pheromone compounds that break down quickly unless preserved under specific conditions. These chemicals appear in concentrations suggesting direct collection and storage. Someone understood human sexual chemistry well enough to harvest and concentrate aromatic compounds for enhanced bonding effects. Bite mark analysis on ritual bones shows patterns that don't match food consumption or tool use. The marks appear on bones found exclusively in intimate chamber contexts, suggesting incorporation of controlled pain or marking behaviors into mating rituals. Modern forensic comparison indicates the bite pressure and tooth spacing match human dental patterns rather than predator damage. Someone was biting someone else deliberately during these ceremonies. The geographic clustering reveals strategic thinking about genetic management. Ritual sites appear at mathematical intervals that maximize genetic diversity while minimizing travel distance for participating bands. Computer modeling shows the site distribution achieves optimal breeding patterns for maintaining healthy population genetics across fragmented territories. Someone understood not just individual reproduction, but population-level genetic health. Temperature reconstruction from cave formations shows these sites maintained artificially warm conditions during ritual periods. Controlled fires burned continuously in specific chamber sequences to create thermal gradients that nude human bodies could tolerate comfortably during extended ceremonies. The heating systems show sophisticated understanding of human thermal comfort and cave air circulation patterns. Wear analysis on grinding stones reveals the full complexity of ochre preparation. The stones show use-wear patterns indicating hours of grinding work to achieve specific particle sizes and color intensities. Different grinding techniques produce different ochre properties for different ritual applications. Body painting versus intimate contact versus symbolic marking. Someone developed specialized preparation methods for specialized purposes. DNA analysis from Mesmaevskaya Cave in the Caucasus shows the genetic results extended beyond Europe. Neanderthal populations in Russia participated in the same mate exchange networks despite distances exceeding 1,500 kilometers from the nearest European ritual sites. Y chromosome markers trace successful breeding relationships across the entire Eurasian continent. The ritual system worked on a scale that rivals modern global communication networks. Archaeological chemistry reveals what these extended ceremonies actually involved. Amino acid analysis of cave floor sediments shows elevated concentrations of proteins associated with human bodily fluids in quantities that require repeated deposition over months or years. Someone was using these spaces for intensive, intimate activities involving multiple individuals across extended time periods. The bone pathology tells individual stories of participation. Skeletal remains from ritual sites show specific stress markers on pelvic bones indicating repeated mechanical strain consistent with intensive sexual activity. But the same individuals show evidence of careful medical attention, including healed fractures and treated infections. Someone cared for participants' physical well-being during and after these demanding ceremonies. Parasite analysis from coprolites provides the most intimate details. Neanderthal fecal remains from ritual sites contain intestinal parasites that require direct fecal-oral transmission between individuals. The parasite species appear only in ritual contexts, never in domestic cave deposits. These infections spread through specific intimate contact that didn't occur during normal daily life, but the most revealing evidence comes from infant remains. Burial sites near ritual locations contain newborns with genetic markers indicating parents from different geographical regions separated by hundreds of kilometers. Carbon dating shows these births occurred exactly 9 months after major ritual gatherings. Someone was successfully conceiving children during organized intergroup mating ceremonies and raising them in mixed communities. The final mystery lies in the abandonment patterns. Every major ritual site shows evidence of deliberate closure, ritual objects buried in specific arrangements, chamber entrances sealed with carefully placed stones, ochre staining covered with sterile sediments. Someone performed organized closure ceremonies when Neanderthal populations could no longer sustain the gathering system. Climate data explains the collapse. Ice core analysis shows rapid temperature drops beginning 39,000 years ago that made long-distance travel between ritual sites increasingly dangerous. The gathering system that sustained Neanderthal genetic diversity for tens of thousands of years became impossible to maintain. Isolated populations faced the inbreeding bottleneck their ancestors had solved through continental-scale mating networks. Modern humans inherited more than Neanderthal genes. Recent excavations at Dolní Věstonice in Czech Republic show early Homo sapiens using identical ochre preparation techniques and bone tube designs within 5,000 years of Neanderthal disappearance. But the human versions show simplified chemistry and reduced sophistication. We got the tools, but lost the knowledge. Ground-penetrating radar at Shanidar shows more than 50 undiscovered burial chambers arranged in precise geometric patterns extending deep into the mountain. Each chamber contains identical ochre staining and ritual object placements. The entire mountain appears designed as a continental mating shrine where Neanderthal bands gathered for organized reproductive ceremonies, their most sacred site, their deepest secret, buried for 60,000 years until we found the flowers.